What I've learned about leadership over the past year, it was an incredible year to be a leader. When COVID made its appearance, my first priority was to make sure my team was safe and that we had what we needed to adapt to the challenges the pandemic presented. Then, as a team, we pivoted quickly to ensuring the successful mission delivery of two agencies, OPM and the Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency. Um, Leaders are in place to block and tackle. It's important to now allow enough room for team members to step up and deliver solutions because they will. Being calm, flexible, and having a good sense of humor were also key attributes I relied on quite heavily in the last year.
One of the things that I've learned about leadership over the past year is that as leaders, we have a responsibility to create a workplace that will get the best out of our employees and get the best business mission outcomes. And while that's been a part of what I've done my entire career, the last 15 months have really drilled into me the importance of managing to the whole person. We each have in our professional lives obligations and responsibilities, but we also have in our personal lives obligations and responsibilities. And a management style that does not take both of those into context really misses an opportunity to not only get the most out of your employees and get the best business outcomes, but also it misses the opportunity to create the most effective work environment, not only for the government, but for the employees that are participating in that environment. One of the ways that I've had to change how I lead during the pandemic is we've had to be more intentional about establishing and maintaining those connections between supervisor and employee, and also between employee and employee. We've always been a very social agency. We've gotten along very well, but we've had to find creative ways to find virtual ways to maintain that connectedness. That connectedness and that cohesiveness is one of the things that generates the best business outcomes, the best government outcomes. And so we spend a lot of time curating those interactions in a digital world to maintain those really good outcomes.
So what have I learned about leadership over the past year? This past year, the resilience of the federal technology workforce was just incredible. Not only did they handle disruption in their personal lives, but they stepped up and they responded to all the demands placed on them as a result of the pandemic. And it was significant. My SBA IT team a year ago pulled overnighters, many overnighters, to make funding available to small businesses. Yet they had families, they had other challenges that made their lives even more difficult. So they had to work through their personal life, as well as overnighters meeting the demands of getting money out to those small businesses. The federal workforce was dedicated, they were creative, and they pulled through to meet the mission. This was demonstrated across the entire federal government over and over and over again. The CIOs were incredible as well. They're part of that incredible workforce, working the demanding hours, getting the money out. This last year, watching them was incredible and really bringing the federal workforce, the IT community together to really drive solutions to help our nation.
So what have I learned about leadership over the last year? Well, it's certainly been an amazing year. Working through a pandemic, and we've had to adjust to operating as a team with remote work, being able to adjust to people's schedules, to be able to use new technologies. And I think the thing that I learned is that we have to adjust to keep people engaged and motivated. I'm an in-person kind of leader. I love that personal interaction and ability to sit down with somebody and face-to-face or walk into somebody's office and brainstorm on the fly. And I think we've all had to learn different ways of connecting with and motivating people. I think some of that will translate over the long term. I think it was sometimes a healthy experience. Although we've had to learn to live with technology, we're going to come out of this operating differently. But as a leader, I've had to learn to look for the more subtle signs about how the team is doing, to be able to do those interactions, maybe sometimes in a more nuanced way, and to keep tabs on the team in a very deliberate way. Whereas before, keeping tabs might have meant saying hi, stopping to talk in the hallway, how are things going? During the pandemic, it meant deliberately sending people an email and saying, hey, I just want to check in and make sure you're okay and that we're good. And let me know what we can do to help you. And while that felt awkward in the beginning, at the end, it was good. And that's probably a practice I'll try to continue. And I think everybody appreciated those sort of conscious points where we reach out to others. So it has certainly been a learning experience. And I'm looking forward to taking some of that learning with me as we move into the post-pandemic world.
Absolutely. I think over the last 15 to 16 months, the pandemic has really taught me the importance of adaptability, effective communication, and actually, most importantly, being thoughtful to the needs of your employees and also customers, people. More than anything, this past year has reinforced that leadership is never a once and done concept. When I think about leadership, I often associate it with not just the business operations and business continuity, but also the people part. They're all important. One drives the other. You need the people to drive the business and the technology, but ultimately our operations affect how our people engage with each other. And what else is important is it's important to be able to pivot from what might be previously established plans or a course of action and be able to react and change direction as seamlessly as possible. But the reality is we got the pandemic order virtually overnight. We saw this coming. We saw the pandemic coming. We can see the writing on the wall. We can see the tsunami wave approaching. And ultimately the order happened on a Sunday night, if I recall correctly. And Monday morning, it was about getting folks into the office, allowing them to take their equipment and essentially do a proper transition into a maximum telework environment. So we did as much as we could leading up to the ultimate order that was issued. And then when it happened, we had to adapt and change our styles and change our focus, perhaps set aside big projects that might have other due dates and deadlines and focus more immediately on the tactical transactions of getting everybody up and running and fully operational in a remote telework environment.
So what I've learned about leadership during the pandemic was the fact that we have a really resilient workforce. People were more than willing to adapt to the new normal, whatever that was for the time being. And it did morph a lot during the year-long pandemic where we had to make sure we were fulfilling the mission, accomplishing what we set out to do, and that is supporting all of the examiners in both patents and trademarks. And so how it changed, it was really all about the sense of urgency in the beginning, but then it went into a sustainment sort of scenario where we were in this for the long haul. And so we had to get efficient at what we were doing. Instead of just being effective, we had to actually be cost efficient. And that fell in line directly with our better, cheaper, and faster new ways of working. It was crazy because we're trying to move and transition the entire team to a new mode where they weren't just working before in their HR traditional organizations. We actually created product teams using DevSecOps as our background. And so because of that, it was a new way to work. And so we honed our effectiveness and our efficiency. And that's where we are right now. So when the pendulum swings back, although it won't swing back all the way, we're looking forward to what's happening in the future. And we can't wait to deliver even more results.
Because of the pandemic, we were fully remote. We've always been a distributed team, distributed around the US. But the pandemic, forced us all to be apart. And I found it was really helpful for the team to feel supported and to continue to be productive. I think the second thing we learned was about it gave us the opportunity to pressure test the fully remote situation. Oftentimes we, we're in the before times, we're able to bring people together. But when you're fully remote, I think we had to think about everything from, increased cybersecurity. How are we managing our devices when everyone is on their own networks and systems? And it sort of gave us an opportunity to test out, how you do, classified work and finding remote and secure facilities around the country to be able to work on things at different levels of classification. So it really, for us, sort of pressure tested what we can and cannot do in a remote environment.
Yeah, no, one of the things I've learned about leadership over the pandemic is that remote work can be very, very, very effective. It gives you a good balance between personal as well as work life. It gives that work-life balance that many have so longly looked forward to. However, remote work does not replace the human interaction element. So one of the things that I've learned or begin to appreciate a lot more is the fact that, hey, that human interaction and human element piece is the most important. And as a leader, we had to be more adaptive to the construct of remote work. However, it has enhanced how our professionals embrace coming to work, embrace the job that they're doing, as well as the productivity. So I think as a leader, being balanced and being agile has been key to successfully getting through the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as operating in the new now construct, even though it continues to change.
One of the most important lessons I've learned about leadership in the past year is that leadership is not simply about just creating a vision and handing it or giving it. It's about being really sort of responsive and adaptive to changing conditions, because with COVID, that's what we had to do. We had to think off our feet. And so really enabling the employees to unlock their full potential is really what leadership is, because the more people that you engaged in the crisis and that you let loose in the crisis so that they could go out and come up with innovative and creative solutions. It's also about sensing the present to predict the future. I think what we did really well in our group was we played worst case scenario for almost every situation. And so having that ability to really enable and empower your workforce to be very sort of free in the way they thought and think about solving a problem. Because with COVID, there was problem after problem after problem, whether it was, lack of employee resources, or whether it was capacity or capabilities, the ability to allow people to work remotely in very quick time frames. So I think I would say the critical leadership lesson is really engagement and inclusion. Because once you unlock that potential of your employees and you allow them to bring out the best, they will be creative and they will drive the solutions. So, and also I think we've all had to step back to think about, these 5 and 10-year visions, as opposed to what is the present, sense the presence. What does that tell you about the future, which is tomorrow or the next month? And how do you then sort of address that? I think creating a collaborative environment for the employees and creating providing the infrastructure and the environment for collaboration is sort of key to then unlocking the potential of the workforce.
Human beings continue to amaze me. This year, when our world turned sideways, the entire federal enterprise proved that we were able to quickly transition to new ways of collaboration and communication that might, in the end, have led us to discover new and more humane ways of working.